coming up, but I want to give just a brief history of what we did last time and talk about what is happening so far and what may happen, in part because things are in flux. Even before the government shutdown, things were in flux. So briefly, the Decadal Survey is a study by the National Academies, chartered by NASA, and this will be the third Decadal Survey coming up in 2 to 3 years. The
take this off.
Sure. The previous, the most recent Decadal Survey, SBAG wasn't around for the first one. For the second one, SBAG reacted with white papers about various opportunities. In particular, the white papers tended to be driven by the bodies that they were going to, the type of body, and with a poll of the community, which was pretty well responded to. And you can find that information on the SBAG webpage. I would point out that this was done in conjunction with, I believe it was the Primitive Bodies, I believe that was the title of the subcommittee. So this was asking, okay, what would be useful input to you, and then going ahead and finding ways to get that input. So in a lot of ways, I hope that we will be doing the same thing. For the current one, right now there is an astrophysics Decadal Survey that is going on. We had a little bit of talk about that yesterday with relation to the astrophysics assets and the solar system input into that. After the astrophysics Decadal Survey, the planetary Decadal Survey will be chartered relatively soon, and I do not know the timescale, particularly after the shutdown, whether that will have delayed things, but we're about a year off, I believe, was the plan. One thing that has always been done in conjunction with Decadal surveys is studies of missions that might rise to the priority of flagships or new frontiers. Last time, there was not much in the way of small bodies studies. There was the common nucleus sample return. This time, it is clear that we have more targets that we are interested in. New Horizons made it clear that the Kuiper Belt is interesting. Pluto in particular is interesting. Ceres, a mission to do more at Ceres than Dawn was able to do would be interesting. There are other things that I'm sure that people can imagine. Those were the two that seemed like the highest priorities. A couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, there was a mission study team for Ceres that was set up. Those of you who are on that, has that group been met yet or been blessed? Okay. All right. So the word is that the SBT for Ceres has been dismantled, and I did not see that announcement, but I can tell you some background that I think probably explains it, which is that there was a ruling that any of these teams doing studies for NASA would have to go through the FACA process, which means background checks on everyone, things that took months to do, which delayed and delayed and delayed the Ceres one, which is why Lori Glaze, who is the interim director for Science Mission, or for Planetary Science Division, had set up a system where there will be a competition to do these studies. Exactly how this competition will work is not clear to me. I don't think, I talked to her about it shortly before the shutdown, and this was not something fully formed. It's clear that it's not going to, there's not going to be an announcement coming out tomorrow. But the idea is that since it has become virtually impossible for NASA to just commission a team to do that, what NASA can do is give grant money essentially for groups to do that. Whether you apply to be on a study, whether you apply to with a team to do a study is not clear. So you can ask me questions that I can forward, but I certainly don't know the answers, and I don't think the answers have been defined. So that's clearly something that we need to do. In terms of figuring out what what we want to stress, we have SBAG as a whole has made a couple of suggestions. For instance, that the body-driven organization should at least be reconsidered. Maybe that is the right way to do it, but it might be that there should be some consideration more along the lines of origins and astrobiology and things like that. Where that will go, I don't know, but one of the things that I think we as a group need to do is figure out what are our priorities, what are we interested in seeing happen. And that is one of the reasons why we have been working on first establishing and then revising the goals for SBAG. We will spend much of tomorrow morning talking about that, but think of that as a preliminary activity toward the decadal survey. And then beyond that, I would hope that we would be able to do a set of white papers. But exactly what those white papers are, I think that certainly there will be lots that will just be contributed. If you have some topic that you really want to write a white paper on, please do. Please enlist people. But we will, as a group, the steering committee has discussed that we really think that we should, as a group, put together broad-based community groups to do white papers to the extent that whichever is the relevant subcommittee or subcommittees are interested in having them, because doing something that is of no interest to the structure that ends up being there will probably not be useful. So we are not going to start white papers or start a poll right now, but suffice it to say that the steering committee discusses this on a frequent basis. Suffice it to say that if you're interested in participating in some of this, please let me or someone on the steering committee know, because we would like to be able to ramp up as soon as we have enough knowledge of how the process is going to work to be effective, because we want to be effective advocates for doing the right things for the small bodies community. And with that, let me just take comments, questions, and let's have the microphones.
One short comment. I think the last decadal survey still had the Trojans as one of the new frontier targets before Lucy was selected. So at that point, there were two small bodies missions listed in the new frontier target. You said only common sense and return.
Yeah, I believe that's right, and that's right. But that's interesting, because the poll, I do not remember having the Trojans. I'll have to go back and look at it.
Yeah,
but yes.
Just a thought, and Lucy's not getting all of the Trojan new frontier funds that was listed previously.
Exactly.
Yeah, comment on that. I think the Trojans were added at the halfway point. So they were not in the original. So that's why they weren't in the poll, right? Because I think they came in with the update.
But were they written in to come in at the 5-year mark?
No.
They weren't.
I don't think so. In fact, I think, ironically, that this was the first opportunity to propose to them in New Frontiers.
No.
And then, of course,
IO that was the IO server that was going to be the New spot. But New Frontiers 4 Trojans were.
Could you use the mic so that?
Sorry. So I think the New Frontiers 4 did allow Trojans to be proposed. IO, the IO server was New Frontiers 5. That was, and I think there was a new to that was 5.
But in any case, yeah.
We should check.
we should check, and Trojans, there, I mean, there are a number of things that we could think about, and if this proposal, this opportunity for mission studies is open, and that's not clear to me whether it's going to be open or whether they're going to ask for mission studies on these 10 or 5 or 20 things. If it is open, there are certainly some things that we ought to be thinking about. Trojans would be one of them. Centaurs would be one of them as well. Paul?
Tim, are you thinking about any way of organizing this? Are you in the steering committee going to be organizing somebody to make sure we have a voice? I know other AGs are already getting together and self-organizing themselves so that they have a common set of white papers and goals that are going to be distributed. So I'm just wondering if you're thinking about that. And if you give us any insights.
The steering committee, yes, we are thinking about it, but it's not clear to us that assuming that the study will be organized exactly the same way it was last time, it's not clear to us that is an effective way to spend our time. So we are trying to be ready to both to push make suggestions on how it ought to be chartered, and as soon as it is chartered, to try to be ready to jump. But we are not trying to write the white papers now. Other comments or questions?
So,
hang on just a second, wait for Mike.
there is some discussion in the other communities, and I think it also came up in the SBAG about the interest of keeping a portfolio of new frontier missions, or versus opening the new frontiers for one to solar system. And so I was wondering if this is something we want to revisit again, or...
Yeah, so actually, I believe it was our last meeting, we had a little bit of a discussion about this and ended up with a finding, which the community did see, that we would like to see the New Frontiers somehow, I believe actually what we said, either open up the New Frontiers missions or have a very well-defined process for adding New Frontiers missions. In particular, the way the Ocean Worlds mission was added last time, it's not that the idea of, well, there are probably some of us who would object to it, but Ocean Worlds at that point was a very logical thing to have, but there was no obvious way to add it, so it was added sort of by fiat, which left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And I think one of the things we suggested was, well, perhaps there should be a mechanism to decide a couple of years out from the New Frontiers call what is going to be allowed if it is going to be a closed call.
2 comments on my first one is kind of to repeat the question. So having some trouble.
Oh, sorry.
But then another comment from online. OPAG in the past has had findings on open New Frontiers programs in the next planetary Decadal survey.
Yes, and so the question was about that, and yes, SBAG had a similar finding. That was what I was trying to say, that we had a finding that we wanted it either to be completely open or to have a well-defined process to or have a well-defined process of how missions could be added. Other comments or questions?
So, there's discussion about going to the outer giant planet. So, you're going to Neptune, and there could be potential for either setting Triton or somehow getting something that would come off that spacecraft to go further out into the Kuiper Belt. I'm just wondering, is that something SBAG has thought about, sort of co-advocating for, or thinking about with OPAC, about it being sort of crossed between the different
so the question was the possibility of a combined, say, outer planets and small bodies mission, and there is a group working on that proposal, or on that sort of proposal, we have had a presentation from them, and we had a finding, and I cannot remember the exact wording of the finding, but basically saying that missions that can accomplish goals in multiple places are a really, really good idea. And so I believe we mentioned that, and combining Phobos Deimos things with Mars missions, that sort of thing. So yeah, when opportunities to collaborate with other AGs come along, we are highly in favor of it and have expressed that. Other questions? Okay, so one thing I would encourage everyone to do is, we're getting into the run-up, and we're starting to hear, see presentations available for this, and I would encourage people to keep track of those presentations. I'm sure there will be something at LPSC, and figure out what ways we can play into that, what ways you can play into that. Okay, so thank you. And we're a couple of minutes early,